Did President Trump just ignite a new trade war with Canada? The 25% tariffs set to hit Canadian imports have sent shockwaves across industries, and the fallout is already escalating. But in a surprising turn of events, Trump has postponed the tariffs by a month, buying time for negotiations. Why the sudden delay? What's Canada's next move? And how will this trade battle affect businesses, workers, and consumers on both sides of the border? Stay with us because British Columbia, Alberta, and Nova Scotia are firing back with countermeasures, and things are heating up fast. Is this just the beginning of a full-blown economic showdown? Let's break it down. So, here's what happened. President Donald Trump announced a one-month postponement of his 25% tariffs on key Canadian imports, which were originally scheduled to take effect on April 2nd. This delay comes after intense discussions with Canadian officials and pushback from multiple industries that rely on smooth cross-border trade. But don't think for a second that Canada is sitting back and waiting. In response, Canadian Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc stated that Canada would delay its planned second wave of retaliatory tariffs, worth $125 billion, until April 7th. However, the first wave of counter-tariffs, hitting $30 billion worth of US goods, remains in full effect. So what's at stake here? Billions of dollars in trade, thousands of jobs, and a decades-old alliance between two economic powerhouses. But things are getting even more complicated. One of the most unexpected countermeasures comes from British Columbia, which has a unique geographical advantage. It serves as a vital connection between the US mainland and Alaska. And now, BC is considering a game-changing move, introducing tolls on commercial vehicles traveling to Alaska. This means US truckers moving goods between Alaska and the lower 48 could face new costs, making shipping more expensive and putting pressure on the US economy. But that's not all. BC is also planning to require that low-carbon fuel additives for gasoline and diesel be produced in Canada. New legislation is in the works to eliminate internal Canadian trade barriers and reduce reliance on US imports. According to BC Premier David Eby, these moves send a clear message to President Trump, Alaska's Republican lawmakers, and the state's governor: we will not tolerate these ongoing threats and uncertainty. But is this just the beginning of a much larger trade retaliation? Nova Scotia isn't holding back either. Premier Tim Houston called Trump's tariffs short-sighted and reckless, and has already implemented a ban on American businesses bidding on government contracts, double tolls for US commercial vehicles on the Cobequid Pass, and removed US alcoholic products from liquor store shelves. Meanwhile, in Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith is warning that the tariffs will backfire on both nations. Within 24 hours, Alberta is set to unveil its own retaliatory measures, while also pushing for national unity to eliminate internal trade barriers and more pipelines and LNG projects to strengthen Canada's energy independence. And over in Manitoba, Premier Wab Kinew has already ordered the removal of all US alcohol from provincial liquor stores. It's clear, Canada isn't backing down. And this goes beyond just one province. Newfoundland and Labrador's Premier Andrew Furey has called Trump's tariffs illegal and unjust, and has taken swift action, including halting government procurement of US goods, expanding trade opportunities with Europe and Asia, and forming a roundtable to strategize Canada-US trade relations. Across the country, provincial leaders are lining up to show their support for countermeasures, and Ottawa is making it clear that it won't tolerate economic aggression from Washington. But how far is Canada willing to go? If Canada's response seems aggressive, it's because the stakes are incredibly high. The US and Canada share the largest bilateral trading relationship in the world, with over $2 billion in goods and services crossing the border every single day. Industries like auto manufacturing, agriculture, steel, and energy depend on stable trade policies, and any disruption could cause massive job losses on both sides. But this isn't just about economic impact, it's about national pride and sovereignty. Many Canadian officials believe that if they don't push back hard, Trump will continue using tariffs as a weapon against Canada in the future. So, is this Canada's moment to stand its ground and show that it won't be bullied? Let's talk about something that most people don't realize. Alaska relies heavily on Canada for trade and transportation. The Alaska Highway, built during World War II, runs through British Columbia and Yukon, serving as the only land route connecting Alaska to the US mainland. Air travel between Alaska and the lower 48 frequently crosses Canadian airspace, requiring cooperation between aviation authorities. The Inside Passage, a critical shipping route, links Alaska to British Columbia, supporting tourism, trade, and commercial shipping. Over $1.3 billion in goods trade between Alaska and Canada happens every year. So if BC follows through with its tolls, and if other provinces cut off US imports, the economic impact could be massive. The big question now is, will Canada's countermeasures actually work? History tells us that US-Canada trade disputes have always been intense, but they usually lead to negotiations and compromises. The softwood lumber dispute, ongoing since 1982, has led to billions in tariffs and lawsuits over unfair pricing claims. The country of origin labeling battle for meat products forced Canada into a World Trade Organization challenge against the US. Trump's 2018 tariffs on steel and aluminum led to Canada imposing countermeasures, which eventually pressured the US to back off. So, will history repeat itself? With tariffs, retaliations, and negotiations all in play, the next few weeks will be crucial. April 2nd, if Trump doesn't back down, the 25% tariffs on Canadian imports take effect. April 7th, if Canada doesn't see progress, its $125 billion in retaliatory tariffs will kick in. And British Columbia's tolls. Nova Scotia's bans. Alberta's countermeasures. They are all locked and loaded, ready to be deployed if tensions escalate. And here's where things get even more unpredictable. Canada is actively seeking new trade partners to lessen its dependence on the US deals with the European Union, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. And emerging economies in Asia and Latin America are being fast-tracked. Some industries are already shifting away from American suppliers, opting for European and Asian alternatives. Could this trade war be the final push that permanently reduces Canada's reliance on the US market? Another major factor in this conflict is politics. With a US election coming up, Trump is doubling down on his America First trade policies to appeal to his voter base. But Canada is making it clear that it won't be an easy target. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and provincial leaders are presenting a united front, signaling that Canada is prepared for a prolonged economic standoff if necessary. The Trudeau government is also exploring legal action under the USMCA trade agreement and at the World Trade Organization. While legal battles take time, they could ultimately force the US to remove tariffs or face global trade penalties. So the big question is, who will blink first? Will Trump back down under economic pressure? Will Canada's countermeasures force the US to rethink its strategy? Or are we about to see a full-scale trade war between two of the world's largest economies? This is about more than just tariffs, it's about power, influence, and the future of North American trade. And the clock is ticking. Let us know in the comments, who do you think will come out on top in this trade battle? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on this developing story. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update, because this trade war is just getting started.